38, 39. I said I have 103 people here right now. Let's get at least 60 responses to understand which test are you planning to take. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. All right. You can see we have 67 responses overall. About 66% of you are looking at the current GMAT, at 16%, focus edition, and then about 18% are not certain as of yet. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Then let's kind of understand when you plan to take the GMAT, if you've not responded to this one, please do so. And then let's understand what your target GMAT score is as well. Let's get those answers here in this poll. Again, I'm going to remove broadcast results so that your answers others' answers do not influence yours. And meanwhile, for those of you who were looking for GMAT Focus Edition, an intro to that, we have 3 articles. An intro to Focus Edition, the percentiles and scoring, and how do you build a study plan for the Focus Edition. So 3 and 4 are contain stuff which you probably won't find elsewhere. In percentiles and scorings, you have my comments on how is this rating scale different from the current GMAT rating scale, not just purely in terms of numbers, but what do those numbers mean. Also, the study plan piece is something that you won't really get anywhere. It will also give you a lookup table. We are actually building a study planner tool for Focus Edition. We aim to launch it on the 1st of September. It's going to be about 5 times as comprehensive as the current one. It sifts through about 10,000 study plans that are possible in the Focus Edition, and then suggest the most optimal one for you. Again, be on the lookout for that. If you're an e-GMAT, just make sure you build your Focus Edition study plan using that. And it's going to be way better than our current PSP, which is for the current GMAT or so. All right, with that, let's get some answers here. When do people plan to take the test? 46 to 75 days, that's my biggest segment here. About 43 of you are there, but another 30% haven't taken a date as of yet. And then 46 of you are about 37% of you have their GMAT in the next 45 days with regards to the scores that you guys are aiming for. The biggest group is at 730 to 750. 760 plus is the next big group. It's about 30%, and then about 24% of you are in that 660 to 700 bracket. Let's hide this. I'm gonna hide this as well. We at e-GMAT have a phenomenal free trial, and essentially, we also have some other upcoming free webinars. So we have a free webinar on geometry. For those of you who are taking the current GMAT, this is the webinar for you. If you were looking at 700 level questions in quadrilaterals, then we have a webinar on pre-thinking. Again, regardless of whether you're taking the current GMAT or the Focus Edition, this is the webinar for you. And one of the other things that I want to really say is we have a phenomenal free trial. Some of you are asking what's the difference between e-GMAT and Manhattan, top 1%. So take a look at the free trial. Just 20 minutes on the platform will tell you the difference that we have and the sophistication that we offer. Okay, with that, let's go right into the webinar pane. This is what I call as a webinar pane overall. In about 5 seconds, the screen will have settled down, or it probably is already settled for you. If you see how do you score 95th percentile or better on the GMAT, then the system has settled down for you. Below the presentation, that's a presentation part, right front and center, is a Q&A or a question and answer part. If you have a question, post it there, and I'll be able to respond to it. That question goes in a queue, it doesn't get lost. On the right-hand side, this is something where I'm going to move this thing over here. This is a place where I ask my questions and you respond to it. Throughout this webinar, I'm going to ask about 45 to 50 questions, and which is why we don't turn the video on, because in general, when this is real-time data, you're going to really see about, considering we have about 100 people, about 5,000 data points going here, being exchanged in real time. And so that's when video doesn't play really well. So if I have a question, I'm going to post it on the right-hand side, and you're going to respond to this. All right. So in general, what's my agenda? A very, very simple agenda. Yes, Shruti, great question. You'll get a recording of this webinar. It's being recorded. It'll be in your inbox at 7 a.m. Indian time Sunday morning, or 6:30 p.m. IST, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time or so. All right. The three parts of this webinar. The first part is we're going to talk about how the GMAT works. Now, regardless of whether you're looking at the focus edition on the current GMAT, the GMAT works the same way. It has the same computer adaptive algorithm, and that computer adaptive algorithm has certain implications with regards to uh, how you prepare for the GMAT, and which is where the understanding the algo is really important. That's going to be about 20 minutes or so overall. Then we're going to go towards your study plan over here. There we'll take a couple of case studies and see how different study plans are different, how it leads to different investments in time, different emphasis, and of course learning different aspects of the prep material. And then from this point on, we're going to talk about how do you study so that you improve consistently and you don't get hit by a score plateau or your scores don't fluctuate. So what's the key to studying well so that you improve overall? This, for those of you who've just joined, this webinar is about an hour and 45 minutes long from this point on. Okay, so with that, let's get started with the first part of the webinar overall. Now, a lot of people really, when they think about preparing for the GMAT, and tell me if I'm wrong, think about, hey, how can I get to high accuracy? How can I answer questions really, really quickly? How can I build stamina with regards to, this long exam? And they focus on this right from the get-go. And these things over here, which are here at the bottom, they are important. No doubt, you've got to do these things if you want to get to a 720, 730, 750, or 760, which many of you are aiming for. But in many ways, they're also secondary. The first thing when it comes to acing the GMAT is building ability. If you do this, then this starts to become important. If you don't do this, then this over here is irrelevant. And that's one thing that I want to kind of emphasize on in this case. In other words, 85 to 90% of your score comes from ability, and essentially about 10% of your score comes from all of these things combined. They're important. That 10% is really important. It could be the difference between a 700 and a 760, but that difference will happen only if you have the ability to get to a 760, which is where Sandesh is asking, how many questions can I get wrong if you get to a 760 or higher? Probably, the simple answer is on the verbal side, probably 5 to 6 questions. On the quant side, probably a couple. That's one combination. For a few others, it could be another. But the answer isn't that simple. I think that the key thing that I would really just say is, if you 760 is 99 percentile ability, that translates into about 80% accuracy in hard questions across the board. That's one way to get to a 760. There are about 5 other ways to get to a 760, and the key thing is which one's the most suitable for you, the most optimal for you, the one that you are that you can reach with the highest likelihood. We've had students who got to a 760 with a V48 and a Q48, which will give you a 760. For them, they just made a couple of mistakes in verbal. They did make about 9 mistakes in quant, and that's one way to get to a 760. We have those who get to a Q51 and a V42 and get to a 760. Those guys made about 7 mistakes in verbal, and they had flawless quant. So that's there. Okay. So and that's kind of where the ability aspect of the GMAT comes in, and we're going to really talk about it. So what is this ability? Let's kind of discuss this. So a lot of people understand this one word, accuracy. And accuracy is, you take a 10-question quiz, you get 8 out of those 10 questions right, and you say my accuracy is 80%. Now, if that 10 question contains, easy, medium, that 10-question quiz contains easy, medium, and medium, then that 80% accuracy will lead to about a 50th percentile ability, or in the GMAT term, that's about a 575, 585 score out of that score of 800. If that quiz contains hard questions, then it's going to lead to a 760 score or a 99 percentile ability overall. So accuracy is what I call as an absolute measure. It's not a comparative measure. Ability simply tells you how good you are compared to other test takers. Okay, so that's one of those things where accuracy on the GMAT is a really bad score. Bad metric when you compare different test takers. So I just mentioned, you make 6 mistakes on verbal and 0 mistakes on quant, and you can get to a 760. If those 6 mistakes are made on medium and easy medium questions, then the same 6 mistakes on verbal and a flawless quant might end with that. You might end up with a 680 as well. So just depends on where you make those 6 mistakes. Okay. How much time should you spend preparing if you are doing it full time? We'll get to see. Depends on your starting score, and you'll see that answer. Okay. So with that, let's kind of understand how does an adaptive test work. Okay. So what I have is I'm going to simulate this, and I want you to humor me for about 7 to 8 minutes around this, no more than that. What I have on the y-axis is the difficulty level. What I have on the x-axis is the question number. We're going to simulate the first 5 questions for 2 different students. You see I have this line over here which says average difficulty line. So this is what we have. So let's look at this over here. Student 1 or case 1 gets the first question, median difficulty level, gets that right. Gets the second question, which is slightly higher. Why do we know it's slightly higher? We're going higher on the y-axis as you go from 1 to 2. So he gets that right. As a result, he gets a third question, which is even more difficult. He makes a mistake over there, because of which he gets the fourth question, which is slightly easier. How do you figure that out? It's slightly easier. You draw horizontal lines from question number 2 and 3, and you see the fourth question is somewhere over here. It's between the difficulty level of that of question number 2 and question number 3. Gets that right. Gets the fifth question slightly more challenging. Gets that wrong. Okay, so 5 questions, we've done that. Let's go to student number 2 or case 2. Student 2 or case 2 gets the first question, medium difficulty level, gets it wrong. Gets the second question, easier. We're moving down on the y-axis, so it's easier. Gets that right. Gets the third question, slightly more challenging. Gets that wrong. Gets the fourth question, which is easier. You can see fourth question is easier. Gets that right. Gets the fifth question right as well. So I'm going to end this test at question number 5. This is my threshold. I want you to tell me, who do you think will get a higher score if I were to end this at question number 5? And here's a poll question which says, who's doing better, student 1 or student 2? I should have removed broadcast results. My bad. Okay, let's get a few more responses. I have 130 students in the webinar. Who is doing better? 1 or 2? I have 70 responses so far. Let's get to at least 80 responses. Come on, I'm doing all the work here. I'm talking, I'm annotating, I'm speaking. You guys can at least go select a poll. All right, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you. This was phenomenal participation. I want to thank those who put their answers in. But 80% of you says student 1. The other 20% says student 2. 95 responses? That's great. Now, I want to ask the group who said student 2, why student 2? Why do you think student 2 would get a higher score if I were to end this at question number 5? And then we're going to go to the group who said student 1. Why do you think student 2 would get a higher score? For those of you who said student 2, what's your reasoning? What's the thought process? And one thing that I'd already say is, this is a no-risk environment. No one knows your name. The reason why we don't have a chat pod but a short answer pod is because your name doesn't show up. So you can actually be quite open here. And the other thing is, you're here to learn. You're not here to really be correct, because if you know everything I'm going to talk about, then you might as well leave the webinar and do something which is going to help you get that higher GMAT score. So participate. When you participate, you get feedback on what you're saying, and then either you agree with it or you disagree with it, which means if you agree with it, you learn something. If you disagree, you ask a follow-on question. Either way, you learn something. So improving steadily here, solve more difficult questions. Let's see about that. Solve more difficult questions. Student 1 answered more. I asked the student 2 group, not the student 1 group. Student 2 group. Student 2, a lot of people are saying he's gotten these 2 questions right, which is why I think they'll get a higher score. Now, student 1 people, I'm going to clear all of this. Student 1 people, why do you think student 1 would get a higher score? Answering difficult questions, absolutely. Other folks, student 1, fewer mistakes in the beginning, He solved more difficult questions. Yes. Those of you who are saying he solved more difficult questions, that is the way to think about the GMAT. Okay. Uh, so that's the right way to think about it. So when you think about student one, and I'm going to really go over here, both these students have 60% accuracy, but essentially student one got 3 out of 5 questions correctly. Each of those 3 questions was either at the average difficulty level, this is over here, or above the average difficulty level. That's student one. Student two also got 3 questions right. Each one of those questions that he got right were below the average difficulty level. Hence, student one wins. Okay, so that's really important for you to understand. In other words, one takeaway that you have is your GMAT score is governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. Okay, that's really important. Okay, I have a question. It's by an e-GMAT student. Nikhil, if you're doing verbal test readiness, this webinar won't be useful for you, so you might leave. Thank you for asking that question. Does this mean that our score drastically depends on the first question? No, it doesn't mean that, Andrea. We'll talk about that. So you've questions such as how important are the first 10 questions, how should you approach them, and so on and so forth. You will infer that, and I will answer those questions very specifically in about 12 minutes or so. Okay, but here student one's higher. Why? Because he's answered more difficult questions correctly. Now, someone asked this question. I thought every question had equal points. No, that's the Indian CAT. That's the GRE to a certain degree. That's not the GMAT. On the GMAT, difficult questions have 3 times as many points as easy questions do. Okay, so if I were to really look at the point difference between student one and student two right now, this guy hasn't answered the most difficult questions, but some of the questions that he's answered were there. So I would really say student one would probably have 70% higher points than student two, despite having identical accuracy. Okay. Does the test measure a percentile score based on the question's difficulty level? Absolutely. And so a great way to look at this is, how many of you have hired anyone? How many of you have hired anyone? Okay. All right. Perfect. Even if you haven't hired someone, you probably have gotten hired. So you have some idea of how the hiring process works. And the GMAT works very similar to how you would think about if you're hiring people the right way. Let me be very clear. You think about the GMAT the same way if you were hiring people the right way. Okay. So I want you to tell me how many positions have you hired someone for? Write it down in the short answer pod itself. Just how many individuals have you hired? Or so more than 100. Wow. Yeah, you've had almost as many people as I have. Okay. So the job that the GMAT has to do. Okay. Let's kind of draw some parallel over here. I'm going to clear your answer. So let's say you are interviewing someone and a company has 5 positions, starting from executive vice president all the way to analyst. And you've got to place this individual in one of these positions. Okay. So how would you place this? Let me just look at this over here. So I'm going to actually do this. So let's say you start with a director level position. The person answers. You give him 2 questions at a director level. The person answers them incorrectly. What's going to be your next action item? What are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? 2 questions director level. You can't reject it. You have to place him. The third question, where would that be? Manager level, not a VP level. Third question would be a manager level. Let's say the person answers that correctly. Then you'd ask another manager level question. The person answers that correctly. The person asks, then you ask another manager level question. The person answers that correctly. What do you do next? 3 manager level questions answered correctly. What would you do next? Ask the director level questions. Yes, got to improve that difficulty level. So you ask 3 questions, 3 more director level questions. The person answers those correctly. What do you do next? I'm going to clear that. VP level, yes. Okay. So one question right, two wrong, one question right. Okay. Now you can ask one more question. Which level would you ask that question for? Would you ask EVP, VP, director? Yeah. You could, frankly, either one would work. Either one would work. Let's say you ask a director level question. Okay. I won't go to EVP. You ask a director level question. Now the interview has ended. Where would you place him? Okay. Pretty much most people are saying director, right? Okay. That's true. I would put him at a director level. Let's say maybe in 6 months he'll go to a VP level. I'd put that piece over here, but I'd put him at a director level. That's how the GMAT works. Was this difficult? No, you guys answered everything. I just gave you a framework, right? Now, this guy got the first two questions wrong. What is the downside of it? Oh, GMAT promotes you after 15 days if you want to. You just have to pay $250. Now, yeah, what's the downside? He lost this opportunity to get more VP level questions. Had he not answered those questions incorrectly, there would have been more questions at a VP level. He might have gone to a VP level, right? There's a possibility. Okay. Does the GMAT allow a score between a director and a VP? So, how many levels do you think does the GMAT have? How many levels on the GMAT? We've talked about 5 levels here. How many levels do you think there are on the GMAT? Think about it. You all know the answer. You're just not thinking about it. It could be a very, very simple math question, which, if you think about it, you can answer in less than 10 seconds. I'm talking about placing an individual. How many levels does the GMAT have? What's the lowest score on the GMAT? What's the lowest score? 200. What's the highest score? 800. So how many levels does the GMAT have? Come on, guys. This is a simple math question. Those who are saying 60, you're close. You're very close. Think about your answer again and refine it. The person who gets the first answer correctly can write to me. I'm going to give them 1 week subscription. Oh, I got my first answer. Let me just view votes. There is AP. AP is the person who answered it correctly. The correct answer is 61. Not 60, but 61. Those who got 60, they were close. How do we get 61? Would someone explain? How do we get 61? 200 is also a level. Perfect. It's A minus B plus 1. So was this difficult? As a question, was this a difficult question? I'm going to actually, sorry, go back. Was this a difficult question? No, you just had to think about it. Think when you had a framework. Now, It could happen that you're between levels. I mean, 61 is a lot of levels. Someone can answer why it was divided by 10. Because your scores are 200, 210, 220, 230, 240. You have intervals of 10. Okay. So that's where. And on the GMAT focus, you still have the same 61 levels. They go from 205 to 805. Okay. Now, how many of you have seen people who have the same scale score, which means same quant, same verbal score out of 60, but their end GMAT score is slightly different? Have you seen that? Someone with a Q49 V38 might get a 710, someone else would get a 720. That's the in-between level piece. Okay. Their Q49 is slightly higher than a Q49. Their V38 is slightly higher than a V38. It combines them and say, this is not a 710, this is a 720. Okay. The person who has a higher verbal will have a higher score, not necessarily, my friend. I mean, trust me, e-GMAT's known for verbal. How many of you know that? A lot of people think, hey, GMAT verbal, go for e-GMAT. A lot of people have heard about that, right? And so one thing that I'll tell you is, if that were true, we would be really, really happy, because verbal were way more important than quant. It's not. It's just as important as quant is. And the GMAC for the first time was really said in the focus edition, quant, verbal, and DI, all three are equally important. Okay. So when it comes to acing the GMAT, you have two challenges. One is get difficult questions served to you. Second is answer them correctly, because you want to continuously get difficult questions served to you. What should you choose between focus and legacy? Depends on what you want. If you the focus edition is going to be available from the best that I know is from the 1st of November. If you have to take the GMAT before that, that's the only thing. You can take the legacy at GMAT itself. If you can wait beyond the 1st of November, then of course you can take the focus edition. That score is going to be much more valid, and so on and so forth. Okay. We do have material for focus. Yes. If you go on the e-GMAT's website, you have. We support the focus edition today. In fact, if you go within the e-GMAT course, you'll see a data insight section there. Okay. So again, regardless of whether you're talking about the focus edition or the current GMAT, your GMAT score is governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. Buildability, then we can worry about these things. Okay. All right. So this was something that was all theoretical. I was just saying that you were listening to me, maybe because you respect me. That's why you didn't question me. Now I'm going to really back um, whatever I've said with real data. Okay. So here are two students, and this is from 2018, and the reason why this data is from 2018 is because 2018, when we had the official mocks, they had phenomenal ESRs. In fact, even the current focus edition ESR kind of only gets up to that mark. So from 2019 to 2022, 2023, the new GMAT, which came with 36 questions, they actually took a step back with regards to providing data to us. So this is the 2018 edition. What you see is attempts of two students. And when you look at these two students, if you compare question numbers 11 and 41, yes, the verbal section at that time was 41 questions, you're going to find very, very similar accuracy. Both have made, I believe, 9 mistakes in 11 to 41. The only difference is this guy got all the first incorrect. This guy made these 2 mistakes. Okay. Now, if you look at their scores, what you're going to find is they're very, very different. Student 1 got a V43, which is the 97th percentile. At that time, 97th percentile did exist. It doesn't exist today. Student 2 got a V32, which is the 65th percentile on the GMAT. Now, how many of you, when you see this, you think, man, the GMAT's harsh? Okay. How many of you are thinking this? The GMAT's harsh when you look at this. Okay. Again, back your answer with a reason. Five, four, three. Come on, guys. I need more answers. I have 130 students here. I only have, what, 64, 65 answers? 66. Is the GMAT harsh? Come on. Put a stake in the ground. Take a position. You want to become managers. Managers make decisions. Decisions lead to consequences. Here, there are no consequences. So at least learn to make a decision, right or wrong. All right, I have 83 responses. I want a few more people to step up. Take a position. All right, 85. Let me end the poll. 63% say harsh, 37% say no, it's not harsh. Okay. Those of you who are saying it's harsh, tell me why. What's the reasoning? What's the reasoning? Why do you think it's harsh? You can put the answer in the short answer pod. Type it out. Come on, guys. No, based on that data. I'm not talking about the syllabus of the test. Penalized for making first two questions wrong. Not everyone's ability can be measured in the same way. Score mechanics is not good. Okay. Let's look at this. So those of you who are saying broadness of topics, there's a lot to study and all of that. You guys are going to falter on CR. This is what your answer is, a classic out of scope answer. That's not the context that I asked that question. And the context that I asked that question is I showed you attempts of two students. The one student got the first two wrong, and the other one did not. Barring that, they had the same mistakes. They had the guy who got a 97th percentile made 9 mistakes. The guy who got a 65th percentile, he made 11 mistakes. And in that context, I asked, is the GMAT hard? Okay. Those who think it's not hard, why did you say that? There are 30 odd percent people who said it's not hard. People who said it's not harsh. Why? Type your answers in, press enter. It gives enough opportunity. Got to stay sharp. I'm looking for a more specific answer. It's a practical paper. Okay. It's a test. It's fair. The serving questions based on ability. You can always prepare for it. Luck. Okay. All right. Now I want to just ask this. What is student one's percentile? What student one's percentile? 97th. Okay. How many mistakes did he make? How many mistakes did student one make? 9 mistakes. Out of how many? Out of how many? 41. What's his accuracy? 70. Was it 71%? 9 out of 41? Should be higher, right? Or is my math? No, it's not. It's the accuracy is 71% between 11 and 41, guys. 9 out of 41. What is 9 out of 41? Quant whizzes. Yes, it's about 80 odd percent. So if on a test, with 80% accuracy, I can get 97th percentile score. Is that a harsh test? 80% accuracy, 97th percentile score. Is that a harsh test? Yes, no? No, it's not a harsh test. Absolutely not. Okay. All right. Let's kind of look at this guy over here. Okay. Let's go back to our model of the GMAT. Okay. Now I want you to be with me. Stay focused. Stop typing on the short answer part. We're going to talk about student two. Okay. Student two. First question, 50th percentile level, which means half the people get this right. All right. This guy got it wrong. Second question, 30th percentile level, which means 70% of the people get it right. Only 30% of the people get it wrong. At this time, if you were not a computer, if you were a human, these two questions this guy got wrong. First a 50th percentile question, then a 30th percentile question. What ability would you assign to this person? Okay. Would you even give him a manager? He got a 50th percentile question wrong and a 30th percentile question wrong. He's not gotten anything right. What's the most likely ability? No, again, mathematics. Let's not go into those 5 levels. Just pure mathematics. At this point, I'd assign him a 15 percentile ability because I have no evidence so far of what he can do. So that's what the test did as well. You can't reject it. You've got to assign an ability to a person. Okay. So 15 percentile, he got that right. 25th percentile, got that right. 35th percentile, 50th percentile, 60th, 70th, 80th. By the time he got to the 80th percentile, he started making mistakes again. Okay. Now, both of these students were e-GMATers. This guy ended up getting a V44. This guy ended up getting a V35. So the test did a phenomenal job of estimating their ability. And guys, we'll share the recording as those of you are saying. Okay. So the test did a phenomenal job. Now you guys are looking at it through the lens of accuracy. The GMAT doesn't look at them through accuracy. What it does is it estimates their ability and then evaluates their score. So here are their ability scores. This is the SC ability score, CR ability score, and RC ability scores. When you look at these students through the lens of ability, do they look very different? Do they look very different through the lens of ability? So when I really say GMAT's a test of ability, ability on the GMAT's not an abstract concept. It's a very numerical concept. Okay. Student 1 here has a 95th percentile ability. Student 2 here has an 81st percentile. 95th percentile in CR, 66th percentile in CR, 87th percentile in RC, 59th percentile in RC. Okay. There's the question over here, but he may get wrong only the 2 concepts that he did not master. How do you master the rest? First of all, on the GMAT, questions are not testing individual concepts. The GMAT is not a test of information. It's a test of your ability to apply questions. You know, the kind of question that I asked, how many levels does the GMAT have? The answer was 61. That's the kind of questions you're going to get on the GMAT. You think about it, they're not a test of division. They're not a test of, you knowing the limits of the GMAT. They are a test of you building a thought process. Okay. So it's not that the first 2 questions that this guy got wrong were on 2 concepts that he was weak in. No, that's not how the GMAT works. It's an integrated testing environment. How many of you have ever written a patent? Has anyone written a patent over here? Or has a patent to their name? Okay. 90% of the patents in the world, they're not fundamental new materials or fundamental new theories. They are application of information, right? You find a new way to achieve a certain outcome, or you find a new way that enhances a certain outcome. Okay, it's an application of information. I have about 5 patents to my name. So I know a bit about patents, and we need to apply for another 5 patents from e-GMAT. So again, GMAT's a test of application. They're not going to really test you on an abstract concept that doesn't serve any purpose. Okay, so then the question is, if GMAT's a test of ability, what are these abilities of the GMAT test? On the quant, there are 2 abilities. On the verbal, there are 3 abilities. Okay, so what does this mean? Each subsection is independent. On the current GMAT, that is the case. On the new GMAT, that is not the case. Okay, which means your SC ability, your CR ability, and RC ability are independent things. Okay. The second thing, each subsection has equal weight. RC is not way more important than SC or CR. Even though they have different number of questions, their weight similar. It's just that the GMAT needs fewer questions than CR to estimate your ability. It needs more questions than RC to estimate your ability. Okay. What it also means is, if you want to reach a V40, there are many ways of getting there. And so each one of you has your own sweet path, which is where having a study plan is important. Now, even though these 3 things are independent, your process of building ability in each subsection is identical. All right. So how you go from 30th percentile to 90th percentile in SC, and how you do that in number properties, is going to be more or less identical. And you are likely to have different starting points in each subsection. So you have 5 ability levels over here, and each one of you, and in each one of these, in arithmetic, your ability, you have 30 values of ability. In algebra, you have another 30 values. STCR and RC, another 30 values each. So there are multiple combinations of abilities that could happen for each one of you. Okay. Does it mean that you can't leave any topic at all for all the prep? You can, and we're going to see some of that. Okay, but I would implore you to not leave a topic. I would implore you to not do questions beyond a certain difficulty level in a certain topic, and we'll see that. So hold that question. Doesn't verbal score have more impact on the scores of QR and VR are not the same, right? Who says that? Where did you read that? Verbal versus quant. Where did you read that? Or the current GMAT? Again, for the focus, we'll talk towards the end. My GMAT focus study plan article covers all of that. Okay. So quant versus verbal, please understand that. Please understand it, especially if you're an Indian. Okay, so Q51 is 90th percentile, and V45 is 99. Absolutely true. So what does that mean? What does it mean that Q51 is 90th percentile and V45 is 99th? Okay, I'm going to spend about 2 minutes on it, and I'm going to probably record a video on this later on. So on the GMAT, yeah, it just means that fewer people score better on verbal. It doesn't mean on that score out of 800, quant has a lower weight than verbal. Let me just be very clear. Okay, if 10% of people, or in other words, let me just be very clear. What is 99th percentile on the GMAT? What is 99th percentile on the GMAT? No. What score out of 800? What score out of 800 is 760? That's where 99th percentile starts. Okay. Now, Q51, V42. led to a 760. Let me get a whiteboard. I'm going to share some historical data since I've been doing this for quite some time. So let's get a whiteboard here. I'm going to get a whiteboard. 2012, which is where Q51 was 98th percentile or 99th. At that time, Q51 V42 was a 760, sorry, which is 99 percentile on the GMAT. That's the same thing today. You get a Q51 V42, that's a 760. Why is that the case? Can anyone tell me? Even though Q51 now is 90th percentile, Q51 and V42 still is the 99 percentile on the GMAT. Not relative grading. It's just that essentially there are two things that have happened. More people are weak in the verbal section. That part is there, absolutely. And Q51 and V42 will always lead to a 760. Why? Because the way the GMAT's coded is it's saying if you get to the pinnacle, 760 is also an ability level. Remember that, okay? That score of 760 is an ability level. And so a Q51 and a V42, 5 years from now, if the GMAT still existed in the same way, would still lead to a 760. Now, if more people got this combination of Q51 and V42, then that 760, instead of being 99th percentile, may become 97th percentile. But Q51 and V42 will always lead to a 760. No, verbal doesn't have more weight on the overall GMAT score. So Q51 V42 leads to a 760. Q48 V48. If you don't get a high quant score, you get a Q48 and a V48, you get to a 760. What is a scaled score? 96. So if you miss 3 points on quant, okay, if you miss 3 points on quant, you have to make it up with how many more points on verbal? We had 51, 42, which led to a 760. So you'll miss 3 points on quant. You've got to make it up with 6 points on verbal. Which one seems heavier now? Quant or verbal? 3 points on quant, 6 points on verbal. Q51, V44 leads to a 770. For 2 additional points on verbal, you only get 10 points. Okay. So for all practical purposes, consider them to have the same weight. Okay. Don't worry about that. Just all practical purposes, consider them to have the same weight. Don't think verbals. Q51 is easier. It is not. Trust me. You get a Q51 and then tell me. Okay. I'm not saying it's impossible. I have a Q51. I've seen people who've scored 100 percentile on the Indian version, which is the CAT, and still they've been stuck at a Q50 on the GMAT. Okay. So no, it seems easier. It's not. It's about perfection. Okay. Let's come back. Is V51? Absolutely, it's possible. Yes. Very much possible. Okay. Guys, let's come back. I think we are here to build your study plan, not worry about doing a PhD on GMAT scoring. I can do it. I have done it. But I'm an algorithm designer, so I study the GMAT and I can go on for 3 hours, but then that we would defeat the purpose. Okay. So the most important thing that I want you to focus on is when you think about ability scores, your GMAT preparation, ask yourself, what are my target ability scores? What are my optimal ability scores in these subsections? That's really important. Okay. Now, again, some more data that GMAT's a test of ability. There's one of our students who improved from a V17 to a V40. Okay. V17, which is 18th percentile on verbal to 91st percentile on verbal. This is a screenshot of his ESR. You can see that 91st percentile on verbal is composed of a 94th percentile in SC, 79th percentile in CR, and 73rd percentile in RC. So again, your score in verbal is a combination of your abilities. Okay. Now, GMAT's a forgiving test. This guy, when you think about it, how he built his ability when the questions were medium and medium hard, he got most of those questions right. When the questions were primarily medium hard and some hard, he got again a majority, an overwhelming majority right. And when the questions were primarily hard and a few medium hard, he made half the mistakes. Yet he was able to get to a 91st percentile. That's what I call as a forgiving test. You can make mistakes on the GMAT as long as you make mistakes on hard questions. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Now, 3 questions that you guys have been asking. I want you to put in why, and why. All 3 of these questions are yes, no questions. Do the first 10 questions matter? Should you approach them differently? Should you spend more time on the first 10 questions? So why, and why, n. I'm going to remove broadcast results. So put in your answers, press enter. The answer will be stored. And then once I get about 30 responses, I'm going to broadcast results. All right, I have more than 30 responses right now. YYN, YNN, 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 YYY, 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 YNN. I have some really good answers. Thank you. All right. So here are my answers. Do the first 10 matter? Absolutely. Should you approach them differently? No. Should you spend more time? That would be criminal. Don't do that. Okay. Let's understand why that's the case. Again, the same principle. You can make mistakes and still get a high score as long as you make mistakes on hard questions. Now you win or lose the test in your prep phase. Your actual exam is a mere expression of your preparation. Okay, really important. Anyone who plays sports understands this. Your preparation determines a majority of whether you win a game. Okay, your actual thing in the game is just an expression of your preparation till that point. If you don't have the ability to develop to defeat your opponent, if you are 1/3 or 1/5 or 1/7 or 70% of the player that they are, unless and until your opponent has a bad day, you're not likely to win. Am I correct in sports? Unless and until you have the ability to defeat your opponent, that's not going to happen. Okay. If you get Q30 and then you start verbal, you'll start with 50th percentile or lower. You'll still start with 50th percentile. The current GMAT doesn't work that way. The new GMAT works slightly differently. Okay. So that's there. So your preparation is what matters. Now, what it means is that if you truly are a 90th percentile individual, this is what your stats are going to be. You're going to be able to answer 90% of all medium questions correctly, 80% of all medium hard, and 65% of all hard questions, which means this is the probability that you'll get a medium hard, or a hard questions wrong. This is the definition of a 90th percentile individual. If you don't meet this criteria, you're not a 90th percentile individual. Okay. Now, what this means is, if in the first 10 questions, which for most of you, majority of those questions would be medium, you're going to answer them correctly. If you get a hard question, okay, then, and if you make a mistake on it, the test is not going to hold that negatively against you. Okay. In the same way, when you interview someone, if you start with an EVP level question, that person doesn't get that question right, you will not hold that against that particular individual. Just one question. Okay. Now, what happens when you start to consider the first 10 differently? These stats go out of way. Has anyone lost to a lower ability opponent here in sports? Has anyone done that? Okay. Why did you lose? What were you doing? There are times when we are extra nervous. When we are extra nervous, we don't do things in our regular way. We don't approach our shots. We don't approach our questions. Okay. And when that happens, they get an upper hand initially. Same thing happens with the test. If you are really cautious about it, you check your answers. You check your answers. Sometimes you do A, B, C, D, D, E, and you really say, oh, selected C, go back and say, maybe D is right. And maybe I'm going to select D. And even though C was the correct answer, you end up choosing D. Has this happened with anyone? You initially chose the right answer, but then first 10 questions, you say, let me just go double check myself. And that's when this 10% goes to the probability of incorrect goes from 10% to 20%. And the probability of correct hard goes from incorrect hard goes from 35% to essentially 40 to even 50%. I've seen people do that. And when you do that, that's when you go from a 90th percentile. This to me is a 60th percentile guy. Don't do that. Don't consider the first 10 differently. You consider the first 10 differently, that's when you will lose the test. Okay. If you truly are a 90th percentile student, you get a medium question, you go your regular way, you'll get all of that correct. Okay. During JEE, I've seen that happen with a lot of people. Yes, guys, everyone will get a recording of this session. I know a lot of you have been asking. Okay. So, are the first 10 important? Yes. Should you do anything about them? No. Just go the regular way. Everyone makes mistakes. Magdalena, who scored a 780, V47, made mistakes. Actually, she scored a V48. Prateek, 760, V47, made mistakes. Okay. So the core thing, focus on building ability, build a consistent process and answer every question, whether it's the first question, the 10th question, the 15th question, or the 31st question. Approach those questions the same way. Don't change your process. That's what you've excelled in. That's what you've done all your preparation. Don't change it, because when you change it, then you're kind of insulting your preparation. Okay. Now, you all need a target ability needs subsection, which is where a personalized study plan comes in. Why is it said that consecutive mistakes is penalized very badly? Is that true? Yes, it is true in many scenarios. Okay. Why is it said that? That's a great question. Let's kind of understand this. If you've understood the simulation of the GMAT, you can actually answer that question. I give you a 50th percentile question, you answer it incorrectly. What's the next question that I'm going to give you? What's the next question that I'm going to give you? This is a 50th percentile question. Half the people question 30th or 40th, depending on where I am. And you do that wrong as well. I have a much stronger case to make a definitive judgment about you, right? But the point really is, how about RC the same way? See, even the RC section on the GMAT's adaptive. How many of you practice questions from the official guide? How many of you practice RC questions from the OG? No. Okay. How many questions do you typically have against an RC in the official guide? It's about 6, 7. Some RCs have even 9 questions. Okay. 4 is on the mock. On the official guide, it's between 6, 7, and 9. Why do you have 7 or 8 questions in the official guide when you only get 4 questions on the actual test? No, not to check your understanding. Against every RC, the GMAC builds many questions. And depending on what your estimate of RC ability is, you either get a harder question or an easier question. Okay. So if you're at a 70th percentile, you do the next question correctly, and then the following question after that, you're going to get probably an 80th or an 85th percentile from the same RC. And then from the same RC, if you do that 70th percentile question incorrectly, the next question is going to be a 60th percentile or a 50th percentile. Okay. So even the RC is adaptive. So actually, so you're not penalized against an RC. Some people think, oh, if I don't understand an RC at all, then if I don't get one question right, I'm not going to get the other questions right. No, that doesn't happen. And you guys would have felt that. For those of you who've answered questions from the official guide, there are some questions in an RC that are easy to answer. Others are not. Okay. Okay, let's come to the study plan. What does a study plan do? What's the job of a study plan? What is the job of a study plan? Okay, study plans, the job is, I mean, you can say everything's to build ability, but something more specific than that. Set your goals, systematic upgradation, okay. Progressive learning, that's good piece. Pick questions correctly. That's not. Study plan doesn't do that. Help you reach your target score basis where you are currently. Okay, that's a good answer. Help you stay focused and on track. That's a good answer too. Track progress. Okay, that's a decent answer too. To set your goals. Consistency. All right. Lots of good answers. In the context of how we think of a study plan, we try and answer 3 questions, and these are all personalized answers. The first question is, how will you as an individual reach your target GMAT score? And then to elaborate on that, what, we talked about 5 subsectional abilities. For you, based on your starting 5 subsectional abilities, what are the target 5 subsectional abilities that you need to get to your target score? Okay, so these are your target abilities. Okay, that's the first piece. The second piece is, how much time do you need to get to your target GMAT score? Which means, hey, if you determine that you need to get to from a 30th percentile to an 80th percentile, okay, how much time do you think you'll need to get there? All right. And then the third piece is, okay, let's say we find out in SC, you need about 55 hours to go from a 30th to an 80th percentile. Now, how would those 55 hours be distributed? What time, how much time do we believe you're going to spend while learning, the core content, building that foundation? How much time would you spend in cementing? How much time would you spend in refinement to get to that 80th percentile? That's the division of those 55 hours. So one is what is the target? The second is test time estimates. The third is where would that investment go in? Those three answers are really important for us. And then when you answer those questions, you also build a trackability in this entire process. Okay. I'm going to demonstrate that with case studies. I'm going to look at 2 individuals, both of whom succeeded. What you're going to really notice is that their study plans are very different, despite the fact that they have very similar target scores. So we're going to look at 2 students, Ayush and Rafaela. Ayush went to Columbia, Rafaela went to Harvard. So let's see how they build their study plan. Excuse me. So we're going to start with Rafaela. Rafaela started with a starting score of a Q46. She took a Sigma X mock, which is an e-GMAT mock test that gives you an ESR. She got a Q36 and a V36. Okay. So this is a Sigma X mock. You can see this is how the Sigma X mock dashboard looks like. These were her starting abilities. What are your observations from her abilities? What do you observe? What can you infer? RC is weak. Okay, good. Better in verbal except RC. Very good. Strong and verbal. RC and arithmetic are 2 weak areas. Yes. When you think about it, put this and this here. I'd put this and this. Really, really good. And I mean, for algebra, Joe, I just put a star here. This is wild card for me. Okay, that's a starting abilities. Now we've built a study planner called Personalized Study Planner, which we are upgrading. What it does is you put the starting abilities from a Sigma X mock in it. It'll look through hundreds of study plans and generate the most optimal ability for this individual. Now, as a starting ability, this is very good. Oh, sorry, let me just put the pen here. As a starting ability, this is pretty good. Let me be very clear. 49 percentile, 50th percentile, I would take it. Okay. Now, these are the target abilities that the PSP generated. She wanted to get to a 730. So it said, one of the things that we try and do is not try and push your abilities beyond 90th percentile if you don't need to. So look at what it did. It said, okay, because their SC and CR are good, there's a high likelihood she was going to do really well in RC. And so because that probability was high, it pushed the RC score to 85th percentile. Then it said between arithmetic and algebra geometry is better. So let's push it to the 83rd percentile. Let's not take it to 90th because that's when you get into the non-linear zone. Let's then try and see how much do we need to improve arithmetic to get to our target score. Okay. Now, someone asked that question. So does it mean that I need to study every topic? Is that person still here? Can I not miss a single topic because of, my first question could be from that topic? Was that person still here? Okay. So when you make this judgment, what you can really say is, hey, there are certain topics that you need to study to a level where you excel. There are others you don't. And when you focus on this ability scores, this is a judgment that you can make within the first 4 hours of your preparation. Okay. The starting point is built on, you can make it based on an official exam because that's the only way you'll get an ESR, or a Sigma X mock, which is an e-GMAT mock test. Okay. Can it happen that you have 0 questions in any one quant topic? It can, absolutely. It can happen and it will happen. Okay. How many questions do you have on the quant section? 31. For those of you who are in the e-GMAT platform, how many modules do you think we have in the quant course? Modules. Each module has about 10 to 12 files. How many modules do you think e-GMAT matters? But yeah, we have about 45 to 50 modules, which means so each module and each module has on an average about 8 files. Each file is about 30 minutes. And for those of you worrying, man, so much study, don't worry. The entire course is pace enabled, which means the course either contracts or expand depending on what you need. So if you know something, it won't make you study that. The whole point that I'm trying to make is 45 modules, 31 questions. So there are modules from which you won't get a single question. Does it mean you can miss those? No. Okay. In the same way, for those of you who interviewed at firms, do you get asked about everything that you have studied for? No. Does it mean you cannot study for something? No. How many modules did I say we have for quant? I believe about 45, if somewhere around that. So, between 43 and 50 is what the answer would be most likely. Okay. And again, as I said, the entire course is PACE. PACE means Personalized Adaptive Course Engine, which means we have a tech engine running that constantly evaluates what you already know. There are people who contract that that 45 module course, or about 300 odd files into about 100 files, or even 70, and there are people who need to take all of those 300. Okay. So why is it important to be strategic about these decisions? It's really important to be strategic about these decisions over here, because you can say, hey, in arithmetic, you don't need to solve the hardest question. Maybe medium is enough, or medium hard. And when you make that judgment, you take a load off your head, especially in areas where you're not naturally strong in. Okay. So based on this, we generate time estimates, and these time estimates are built around how much time do people take when they go, people who've been at a similar ability level from a if your goal is to go from a 30th percentile to a 90th percentile, we look at our past data, we track everything on our platform, and we really look at this and say, okay, the 1,000 people who've gone from ability A to ability B and who've done this successfully, how long did they take on an average? We take the 50th percentile and the 75th percentile time, average them out, and generate time estimates based on that. Okay. So PSP then generated a personalized learning path overall. Now, this is something which you've got to understand with regards to how do you build ability. So in any area, you go through 3 stages of learning, and this is regardless of whether we're talking about the GMAT or talking about learning coding or learning anything. The first thing is you've got to learn the fundamentals in that space and learn how to apply that. Okay. Once you've learned how to apply that, then you know all the fundamentals. You're reasonably proficient at applying those fundamentals. Now you've got to master that application and build that application muscle. The parallel in sports is you may know all the shots in squash. You may know the technique. Now you want to, and you may have a reasonable game. Now you're going to focus on certain areas and make sure that 90% of the bursts that you're picking them up using the right technique. 90% of the drop shots are done using the right techniques. 100% of the time your wrist is cocking the right way. So that's the equivalent that you would do. That's mastering application. And then after that, you still have some natural weaknesses. You build strength in those natural weaknesses. That's when you refine to perfection. Okay. So what ability levels do you do? Learning concepts and applications takes you to 55th percentile if you've done this well. If you do master application, and what's e-GMAT is, what's the word for mastering application in the e-GMAT on the e-GMAT platform? You get to about 70th percentile. That's the lowest threshold you get to. You might get to 80th percentile, you might get to 85th, but yes. So this is what we call as cementing, and we have specific cementing quizzes, specific metrics that you need to hit if you want to graduate through cementing. If you don't hit those metrics, you failed in that subsection. So you have a cementing for SC, cementing for CR, cementing for number properties, cementing for word problems, all of that. And then refining for perfection, that's where you hit those metrics to go from a 70th, 75th, 80th to 90, 95th percentile. Again, very, very specific metrics on the e-GMAT platform. All your study is trackable. Okay. How do you adjust your study plan if you missed a study? It depends on where you miss it. If you missed your study after cementing, perfect, no problem. The whole concept of cementing is you're not likely to forget a whole lot. It'll take you about 2 to 3 hours to adjust it. However, if you are in this phase, please, if you're in the middle of a module, do not miss it. Please don't do that. Between modules, you can still have some gap, but in the middle of a module, don't miss it. And even if you're unable to study for a week, please go back, revise. Everyone can take out 15 to 20 minutes to revise what they've already learned, even if you're all not learning something new. Okay. And that consistency is really critical in stage 1 and stage 2. After stage 2, in any subsection, you can take a break, not a problem. In fact, we recommend people to take a break. But between stage 1 and stage 2, please don't take a break. And if you are taking a break, let's say if you fall sick, you can't study, please revise. Again, remember, what's a 740 score? What's a 740 score? What percentile is it? About 97 percentile or so, 96, 97 percentile. Okay. If you want to be among the top 4 percentile of people, Can you behave the way most of the world does? If you want to be among the, yes, please tell yourself. I know it's hard. Let me be very clear. Okay. There are people out there who really say, hey, scoring 99 percentile is not hard. I can tell you it is hard. All right. Uh, and I can say that because no one has delivered half the success that we have delivered. Forget about comparable. No one's delivered half the success, and I can say that out loud overall. And I can tell you it's hard because it takes a lot of perseverance. So I'm not going to kid you, but you are the one who's aiming for that score. You are the one who says I deserve this. So you are the one who needs to work towards it. Okay. Does that help? Really important. Do not break the consist. Okay, we'll come back to what score is the 70th percentile later on. Let's just focus on the study plan piece. All right, so you have this now. There is no regional bias on the GMAT. Trust me. There is no regional bias. And how long is a normal study plan? Wait for 5 minutes and you will get answers over here. Okay, Rafaela went from 600 to 730, which is what you're looking for, right? Okay. So for Rafaela, everyone remembers Rafaela? And again, please guys, question in the Q&A pod. Okay. What was Rafaela strong in? What was she strong in? CR and RC. Yes. So remember the legend over here. This means you already know this, you don't need to study. This means you need to study. And this means because you're not aiming for such a high score, you don't need to study. Okay. Remember the legend. And with this legend in mind, we're going to go forward. SCNCR, she already knows this. She need not study that. She needs to focus on maintaining. In RC, she has to start from stage 1 of learning, learn concepts and application. Remember, this is stage 1, this is stage 2, this is stage 3. In arithmetic and algebra, you want her to go from stage 1. Again, in arithmetic, she's not aiming for a high percentile, so mastering application is okay. She doesn't need to focus on refining to a perfection. Have you done this with regards to your GMAT preparation ever? Have a clear-cut idea, such a clear-cut idea on the first day? But does this make sense? You ought to do this. Okay. Now this is Rafaela. Keep this in mind, and we are also going to do compare and contrast. Okay. So he took a Sigma X mark. Now Ayush came to us after 2 attempts on the GMAT, and he already had a 680, a 690, and in Columbia had told him, hey, we love your candidacy, your GMAT score is not enough. You got to get a higher GMAT score. Okay. So we asked him to take a Sigma X mock because he didn't have his ESR. So these were his starting abilities. What are your observations? What are your observations here? What is he strong in? What is he weak in? Weak in SC, weak in CR. These 3 areas are pretty okay, right? This is good, this is good, this is good. These 2 are a problem, right? And yes, the person who really said, um, uh, 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 do we do some topic level analysis too? Yes. In e-GMAT, we offer you about 500 points of personalized feedback. We spend about $10 million on our tech platform. So yes, you get 3 levels of analysis. Okay. Now, we added these abilities to the Sigma X, to PSP. These were the target abilities. You can really see in CR, in SC and CR, he had to do major improvement. In RC, also we improved on as we said, he's strong in RC. Let's kind of push this to the pinnacle, and then quant remained more or less the same. Okay. So let's look at the time estimates overall. Again, the 3 stages of learning. And we're going to really look at what are the areas that he needed to study. Quant is up here for him. He just needs to maintain that. Okay, these were ticks too. RC, we asked him to do master applications, so cementing and then refining to perfection, so that he gets from that 80 odd percentile to that 93rd percentile overall. In SC and CR, he spent most of his time, he started from the basics. And yes, Dheeraj, we at e-GMAT we start from basics, we start from master comprehension, we teach you how to read a sentence. And yes, most people who are at a 30th percentile don't know how to read a sentence, regardless of their convent upbringing. Okay, it's just the unfortunate state of our affairs. It's not a judgment on you, it's just how poorly English is taught. Okay. So different needs, different learning content. That's really, really critical. Ayush versus Rafaela. You can see where they spend their time. Rafaela spent barely 3 days on SC and CR. Ayush almost spent 5 weeks on SC and CR. When it comes to RC, Rafaela spent 2.5 weeks of dedicated effort. We're talking about 40 hours or 20 hours a week. So this is about 45 to 47 hours of effort. This over here is about 25 hours of effort over here. This is 25, and this is about 45 hours of effort. Okay. When it comes to arithmetic and algebra, Rafaela spent about 40 hours each on arithmetic and algebra. So a week for us is typically 20 hours. Okay. What they studied was very different too. When it came to arithmetic and algebra, Ayush primarily spent his time in Scholarinium while solving hard questions, whatever he did. Whereas Rafaela started from the very basics. When it came to RC, again, Rafaela started from the very basics. When it came to CR and RC, Rafaela did the same thing that Ayush did in Quant. And Ayush started from the basics in CR and RC. Okay. Does that answer a lot of your questions? How many hours do you think it will take for you to go from get about 130 hours? But we're looking at typically for 130 hours, 150 hours of effort, 130 points, 150 hours of effort. Okay. But how many of you have experienced this level of personalization? Good. How many of you have seen this level of personalization? Yes, only one Sigma X mock is sufficient to build a study plan because it gives you your starting abilities. You have 4 more mocks after all to evaluate your progress, and then you have in Scholaranium enough questions which to build about 20 more mocks if you need to. The pace feature right now is just in the verbal part, just in the quant part of the course, because the quant course is a brand new course. The verbal part of the course was going to get a pace feature, but then GMAT Focus came in, and we spent all our energy building GMAT Focus. But the pace feature will come to the verbal part of the course before the end of this year. Is the Sigma X more difficult than MBA.com? Okay. I'm going to answer this by saying that if you go look at GMAT Club, go read our reviews, and we account for about 60% of all 700 plus scores. On GMAT Club, 60% of all 700 plus scores, every one of them takes a Sigma X mock. Okay. And again, 730 plus score, a lot of you are aiming for that 730 plus score, but some people will give up. So I'm going to share some data which will hopefully keep pushing you towards that 730, 740, even a higher score. So as I said, we've delivered more success than anyone else has, and no prep company can claim to deliver half the success that we have. So one of the things when you have so many successful students is you can kind of get some very interesting stats. So about a year and a half back, we did this research where we said, what's the value of a 740 plus score compared to a 700 to a 730 score when it comes to M7 schools? Okay. And many of you would have heard, hey, a high GMAT score is not the only thing. A high GMAT score doesn't guarantee an admit to a top school. How many of you have heard that? Okay. And that's true. That is absolutely true. A high GMAT score does not guarantee that. But what it doesn't tell you is that a low GMAT score can have a significant impact. Okay. Um, and no GMAT score will guarantee an admission to an M7 school or even a top 12 school or so. So what we did was we reached out to about 1,000 students and we divided them into buckets. Each one of these students had a high GMAT score. So these were between 690 and 780, each of these 1,000 students. We got detailed profile information. Which schools did they apply to? What's their background? How many years of experience did they have? What's their country or nationality? Which schools did they get an admit from? Where did they get a scholarship from? So this was a 3-month exercise that we did, asking, when you want answers from 1,000 people, you've got to request about 4,000 people overall. And what we found, and the reason why we wanted 1,000 people was to get statistically significant answers. Okay, what we found was when it comes to M7 schools, 28% of the, so if you had a 740 score or higher, if you applied to an M7 school, you had a 28% chance to get into an M7 school. It's still not 100%. A 740 doesn't guarantee. But what it means is, when compared to a 700 to a 730 score, your chances to get there increased by more than twice. And we compared profiles against profiles. With very similar profiles, a 740 or higher more than doubled your chances to get into a tops school. Okay, again, not 100%, but 28% is very, very significant considering the kind of schools you're looking at. When it comes to scholarships, okay, we found that 80% of people who applied to a T20 school, T20 means the top 20 outside of M7, these are all mutually exclusive buckets, got a scholarship if they had a 740 or higher score. 82%. Okay, so if you're applying to Ohio Fisher, if you're applying to a Keenan Flagler, and with a 740 plus score, you have a very high chance of getting a scholarship. Okay. Overall, 62% of all M7 and T20 students got a scholarship. Isn't that significant? This was something that we really wanted to do. We said, okay, 740 versus 760 or higher. What's the delta in scholarships? And then purely scholarships. And I am a sucker for scholarship because when I did my MBA, I didn't pay a single penny. Okay. When I did my master's, I didn't pay a single penny either. A lot of my friends say, Rajat, you didn't pay a single penny for your education. Now you make money off education. I say, no, I save money. I help people save money when it comes to their tuitions. And I think that's a noble thing to do. So 740 versus 760, how do scholarships multiply? The delta between 740 and 760 was about $35,000 in scholarship money. That's very, very significant. I took the GMAT twice just because I wanted a full ride. Okay. And you won't see this data anywhere else because no one else has the students to do this kind of research. Okay. GMAT Club has these students, maybe that one, but they don't have the connection with the students that way. Here are some examples. This is statistical data. Here's anecdotal data. This guy got a 770, got a full ride from Ross, Keenan Flagler, as well as from Wharton. He took the GMAT 3 times. This guy is from Africa, and he spent the money because he wanted a full ride, and overall he got about 350K of total scholarship, and spent about $1,000 on his GMAT preparation and MBA admissions. Kongboy got a 760. He got full ride from 4 different schools. From Ohio Fisher, he got a very special scholarship called sorry, I forgot the name, but this basically the school paid him $1,700 a month to study. So in addition to getting a full ride, he got money in his pocket. Okay. Um, he didn't have a super profile. He had a good profile, but he really prepared for the GMAT. He prepared for the interview. He wrote the essays with very specific intent in mind. He quoted the adcom properly, and that resulted in 4 full rides. Okay. Akansha, she got a 750 on the GMAT. She got $180,000 in total scholarships. She did a session for us. She was one of our former students, and then she got into Wharton. And if you go to the e-GMAT website, you're going to see scholarship journeys worth 10 million plus. And as you go over here, you can see their GMAT journey. You can see their scholarship journey separately, and you can see what did they do, how did they negotiate their scholarships and all. You won't find this anywhere else. Yes, Priyo, I can take a session on the focus edition. And our focus mock test would come towards the end of September. Okay. And again, I talked about 3 out of 5 scores. Just to elaborate on that, if you look at data since 2021 on GMAT Club, so the last 2.5 years, you're going to find 60% of all 700 plus scores reported are for e-GMAT, and GMAT Club does a phenomenal job of organizing them chronologically, and 40% are together, by these all prep companies. Okay. A lot of people know us for verbal. When it comes to quant, we report a lion's share of scores as well. This number right now is about 400. This data is about 8 months old or so. Okay. Again, 5-star reviews. We've really talked about this. Okay. How do you build ability? So hopefully you guys are slightly more motivated to get to that 730 odd score, because I don't think anyone wants to pay tuition right now or pay takes the kind of loan that you need to take. I'm seeing just very few yeses so far. Motivated to get to a 730 plus score? Come on, a few more people. Or has the session gone on for too long? Now, who wants to learn about how do you build ability? We've talked about the study plan. We've understood the fundamentals of the GMAT. Let's see how we build ability. It's not difficult. If you persevere, let me be very clear. Perseverance is difficult. The content by itself, not difficult. Okay. You give me 60% of the challenge on the GMAT. And for those of you who've studied, 60% of the challenge is to find 2 quality hours of study. And then stay focused on studying one thing till you hit an 80th percentile ability. Am I right? How many of you study 6 days a week? Or I think the right question is, how many of you struggle to study 6 days a week? How many of you struggle? Yeah. The first thing you've got to do is find out those 2 hours or an hour and a half every day. Okay. The second thing that people struggle with is studying the same thing. Okay. They study SC for 1 week, then say, let me go study number properties. Let me go study CR. How many of you have this temptation? You'll study SC for 1 week. You'll then go study CR. Please resist that temptation. Okay. The third temptation that people have is, I've studied for 6 days. Let me take a mock test to figure out how much I've improved. How many of you have that temptation? Take a mock test every 5 to 6 days to see, maybe my score has gone up by 40 points. Let me see. Okay, if you don't, that's phenomenal. But if you do, resist that temptation. If you are an e-GMAT, please don't do it. Why? Because the platform gives you feedback every 30 minutes. It tells you, on every learning activity how you're doing. Trust that. If you're scoring well, you're going to get there. If you're not scoring well, I'll also tell you, you will not get there. So there are two problems with taking a mock every week. The first problem is your GMAT score is built up of 5 abilities. You have A plus B plus C plus D plus E. You focus on studying A, E is going to go bad if you don't do test readiness before the mock. And then what happens? You studied A, you somewhat improved on A, and you saw E went down, and then you start studying E without finishing A. How many people have done this? Okay. And then you study E, you take a mock test, E goes up, B goes down. Again, you didn't finish E, you didn't reach your target ability, then you started studying B. If your test is scheduled within 2 weeks and you're still studying, then there is a problem, right? Your test is within 2 weeks and you still haven't reached your target ability, or you're not close to your target ability. Okay. What accuracy? Okay. You achieve e-GMATs. What's our cementing metrics that you have to reach in cementing when you pass cementing? What's the medium cementing and hard cementing? 70% for medium, and what for hard? Yeah, 55 to 60 for hard. You achieve that, you can move on. Okay. Again, 3 cementing quizzes in medium, 3 in hard, not 1. Okay. You don't achieve that, you take the 5th, you take the 6th quiz. Build your error log. How many questions should we solve per day on quant and verbal? How many matches do you think Virat Kohli plays every day? So don't think in terms of questions that you should solve a day. Think in terms of skills that you ought to build in that day. Okay. So yes, unless and until you are in that stage 3 of learning, which means that you are within 30 points of your target score, that's when you can look at how many questions should you solve per day. Again, write to me if you need a study plan session. We can really talk about it. Okay, so let's talk about score plateau. How do you overcome score plateau? How many of you are stuck at a score plateau? Okay. So people who are stuck at a score plateau are over here. So when you think about stages of learning, if a lot of people in certain areas achieve that 65th percentile, get stuck over there. They're at a score plateau. Now let's see, why is it that people get stuck at a score plateau? Okay. So going through that score plateau is about a mindset. Okay. It's not about smartness. It's not about the amount of gray matter that we have. All of us have same amount of gray matter overall. So I'm going to compare 2 students. Student 1 is a 60th percentile student. This person is stuck at that 60th percentile. Student 2 is a 90th percentile student. This person improves to that 90th percentile. Both of these individuals started at a 30th percentile ability. And we're going to really just look at the context of SC. So both of these individuals spent 40 hours learning SC. Their overall capability to improve is also very, very similar. Okay. One guy was among the top 80,000 students. The other guy was among the top 20,000 students. 90th percentile means, but top 20,000 students or so. Okay. All right. Now, when you think about achieving 90th percentile ability, it's about achieving perfection. You want to be amongst the top 10% of all test takers worldwide, including the native speakers of the language. Okay. Now, the way they approach the test is very, very different. A 90th percentile student thinks of the test in a very different way than a 60th percentile. And we're just talking about sentence correction here. So a 60th percentile student will think SC is about mastering these major error types, starting from subject verbs to meaning. A 60th percentile student uses splits as the primary method. For them, Meaning becomes a secondary thing. If they can't figure out splits, then they focus on meaning. A 60th percentile student gets about 10 feedback points during learning, and if they have those 40 hours, they spend 70% of those 40 hours, so about 25 to 27 hours practicing, only about 12 to 15 hours learning. A 90th percentile student looks at this very differently. He says GMAT SC tests is an interconnection of about 1200, 200 different sentence structures that are interconnected to create a meaningful sentence. And those sentence structures have errors as they try to join in these areas. A 90th percentile student uses meaning as the primary method. For him, meaning is not an error type, it's a way to solve questions. A 90th percentile student spends 60% of his time learning, and while learning, that person gets about 80 to 120 feedback points. So, in other words, a 90th percentile student out of those 40 hours might even spend 30 hours learning and only 10 hours practicing questions outside of learning. How many of you, when you look at this, say, hey, I look much more like a 60th percentile student than a 90th percentile student? How many of you feel that? Hey, this is, yeah. If you want to achieve that 90th percentile, you've got to approach things that way. So let's see, what do I mean by these 200 sentence structures? I'm going to give you a reference question, a question, it's a 700 level question. Approach this question the way you approach GMAT SC. Okay, so let me reduce the size of this poll. Let's see how I can do that. Put another poll over here. All right, here is the poll. Now, I don't want to time you guys, so I want you to select still solving on this. So that way, when you guys choose an option other than still solving, then I know you guys are done and I'm going to call time. Okay, I want to get about 30 people saying still solving before I show the question. But 18 people who said still solving. Let's get 30 people to say still solving. Okay. All right. So here is the question. Solve this question as if you'd solve an SC question. Okay. Good luck, guys. I'm going to mute myself. All right, get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2. Come on, guys, get those answers in. And 1. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results. All right, this is how you guys did. Choice C was really popular. Choice D was somewhat popular. Choice E was okay popular. And A and B were not popular at all. So, how did you feel while doing this question? How did you feel? Good, all right. Easy, good. Good and easy. Just put in the choice that you guys put in. Also, you would also put in the choice that you guys put in. That'd be great. D, good. C, E, not that hard. Okay. Long, it was okay. I chose C. D, all right. C, tricky. Good. Okay, let's just see overall. So one of the first things that you'd notice here is there aren't very many splits here. It's not that easy with regards to splits. Okay. When you think about this, you have the church coined over here. Then you have while with an ulterior motive, while a few experts claim. You had but as a contrast word over here in these four. The church coined again, so same as choice, same. That the church coined in this case. Okay. The sentence structures are also slightly different. So again, you're forced to use the meaning-based approach over here in this particular question. Okay. All right. So since you can't use splits, you're forced to use the meaning-based method. And let me just say this: the meaning-based method works for every question type, whether it's easy, medium, or hard on GMAT sentence correction, because that's why sentences are written. They're used to convey a certain meaning. So let's see how we apply meaning-based method overall to this particular question. We'll look at what the difficulty level is. Okay. The first thing you do in the meaning-based method is understand why this sentence is written. Don't worry about the errors. Try and understand what is it that the author wants to communicate. And then when you do that, you've got to divide the sentence into its constituent sentence structures. The church coined the date February 14 as Valentine's Day. Why? Because with an ulterior motive, to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia. That aspect is claimed by a few experts. Then the author says, but it is celebrated on this day to honor uh, the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. That is the more prevalent belief. So when you think about what does the author want to do with this particular sentence, uh, he wants to really talk about two claims about why February 14th is celebrated as Valentine's Day. What he says is, claim one is that the church designated at Valentine's Day with a specific motive. Claim two is, it's done to honor uh, the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. Claim one is by entity one, which is a few group of experts. Claim two is by entity two, which is the more prevalent belief. When you were solving this, which aspects did you not take into account while choosing the correct answer? And this is a multiple response question. Maybe you missed out on aspects 1 and 2. Maybe you missed out on just on aspect 2. Maybe you missed out on aspects 2 and 3. So which aspect did you fail to consider while choosing the correct answer? Look at the three aspects. And this is a multiple response. So you can choose more than one. All right, let's get a few more responses before I broadcast results. 3, 2, and 1. You can see most people did not consider aspect number 3, and you're going to see how that leads to them choosing the incorrect answer and rejecting the correct one. Many people did not consider aspect number 2. Most people were able to understand aspect number 1, which is good. And you can really see how this translates into an answer. And this is how you ought to fill the error log. What caused me to make an error? Okay. So if you were able to understand all three and you believe that is the case, you understand the meaning-based approach, that's phenomenal. If, on the other hand, you missed out on some, then you need to learn the meaning-based approach. You need to build that skill set to extract what the author intends to communicate. Okay. So let's kind of, with the meaning analysis there with us, then let's understand how we analyze errors in the original sentence. Okay. So one of the first things you're going to really see over here is that that is claimed does not have a subject. This is does not have a subject. Okay. That's something that's there. You have subject verb, subject verb. So we have two missing subjects. That's a problem. That's there. How many of you got that from choice A? Again, guys, question in the Q&A pod, please. All right, perfect. With that, let's look at choice B. We are analyzing choice B, that you see this. Okay. So choice B says, while with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim. Who has the ulterior motive in in this case? It is a few experts. Is that what the author intended to play to really uh, play over here? Is that what he intended to communicate? Absolutely not. The church had an ulterior motive. Because this changes the meaning, choice B is wrong. Okay, so you can see why this choice is incorrect as well. All right. How many of you were able to spot this meaning distortion while solving the question? Good. Perfect. Let's look at choice C. While a few experts claim that the church coined February 14 as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, their more prevalent belief. Who does this word there refer to? Who does there refer to? The same group of experts. What does aspect 3 say? These are two different entities. Changes the meaning. Choice C is wrong. But half the class got it wrong. Those of you who chose choice, you truly did not consider the meaning completely. Okay. How do you get an error log? You just go to the e-GMAT course, go to the bottommost module. That's an error log module. Before you do cementing, you get the error log. You also get 5 examples on how do you fill the error log. Okay. What's your learning from this? People who made a mistake here. What did you learn? What are you going to do to avoid such an error? Meaning is important. I mean, everyone who made a mistake here knew the grammar behind this. Where they lacked is the application of methods. Okay. I didn't do the mistake, but still didn't understand why. What does aspect 3 say? What does aspect 3 says? Claim 1 is by one group, claim 2 is by another group. What does this choice say? Both the claims are by the same group. This choice illogically suggests that the same group of experts share the two stated claims. That's why. Let's look at choice D now. Choice D is the only choice that's difficult to reject. It tests a nuanced understanding, and understanding that's really, really important, but it's still nuanced. Okay. Choice D says the church coined the date February 14 as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize blah 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 blah, as claimed by. Okay, and let's kind of understand why this is wrong. I'm going to give a very simple example. Apple is the market leader, is claimed by Forbes magazine. Okay, now in this case, are you communicating information? Yes. Are you making a claim here? No. Should you be blamed if it turns out that Apple is not the market leader? The answer is no. Are you communicating information? Absolutely. Are you making a claim? No. Should you be blamed? Absolutely not. Do you guys understand that? Is that clear? Okay. When you say Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine, then this changes. You have ticks over here. What you're really saying here is, hey, Apple is the market leader, and I'm backing that claim the moment you use is as versus is. You back that claim. It's not that Forbes is saying that, you are also backing that claim, which means if it turns out that Apple is not a market leader or not the market leader, you should be blamed. Okay. That one word changes the weight behind that recommendation. Here. Okay. This is tested heavily on RC. Okay. Heavily. Inference questions in RC, the only thing that you can infer is what the author believes is true. If the author says XYZ said something, you cannot infer that. Why? Because that's not what's true as per the author. The same thing over here. So, which is why choice D is wrong. Both the claims, choice D, the way it's written, it seems that the experts backing that, the authors backing that claim. Okay, whereas in the original meaning, claim 1 was by a few experts, claim 2 was the more prevalent belief. Okay, because of which choice D is wrong. Which brings us to our correct answer. That the church coined, so it adds that subject, that the church coined the date February 14th on Valentine's Day is claimed by a few experts. So that is claimed by a few experts. Is the author making that claim? No, the author is merely communicating information. But the more prevalent belief is the author making the claim? No, the author is merely communicating information. It is celebrated on this day to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. Both the two claims are there. Claim 1 and claim 2 is communicated. The sources of claim 1 and claim 2 are correct. Every aspect is correct. This is the correct answer. Why do people reject choice C? They don't like people's sentences starting with that. Some people say there is a that missing here. Okay. And some people look at this as claimed and really say, hey, this is passive voice is wrong, this has to be wrong. How many of you fell for this thing? You say, hey, cannot have a sentence starting with that, need to have a that over here, and this is claimed needs to be. Okay. None of these are deterministic errors. Not one. Yeah, but you may not be familiar with it. There's nothing wrong in it. C had a definitive error. It wasn't doing the job. Okay. If you focus on meaning, you will get to this answer right away. You will really just see every other option distorts meaning. Now, I want to ask you one question. Why do you think grammar exists in the world? Or in other words, I'm going to show you two sentences. Both of these are wrong. Actually, let's just look at this. How will you correct this? How will you correct the sentence? Okay. So, which one is correct? He runs or they run? Both are correct. So, what's the job of grammar? What's the job of grammar? To convey the correct meaning. When you really say he runs, you have double confirmation. That you have a singular verb, singular subject. When you say they run, we have a double confirmation. Right? So the reason why grammar exists is to convey the meaning. Grammar has no meaning, no sense without meaning. Okay. And how do you approach SC questions from a grammar standpoint without worrying about meaning? Why? The whole reason why SC exists is to convey a logical meaning. How many of you have read the introduction in the official guide? In the SC section? Okay. What does it say? The intro chapters. What's GMAT SC a test of? Does it ever say it is a test of grammar? Go read that again. The GMAC, it's a test of communication, yes. And communication is all about meaning. It's not about elegant structures. Okay. You want to get to that 90th percentile, you need to be able to solve such questions correctly. Why? I mean, Larry Page, Satya Nadella, Shantanu Roy, these guys, Sundar Pichai, they don't have perfect grammar, even though Sundar Pichai has a perfect 800 score on the GMAT. But they have their communication is precise, which is why GMAT SC is there as one of the aspects of the GMAT. Okay. So getting to that 90th percentile means that you've got to build a strong foundation. On that foundation, you need to build that method, which is where cementing comes in, and then you need to refine it to identify your strengths so that you get to that 90th percentile. And to do this, you need feedback at every stage, which is where we invest a lot of our time and money in terms of tech. Okay. For those of you who want to know how we give this feedback, we have this on our website. If you go to our homepage, we have a bunch of videos on our homepage. One of the videos that I want you to take a look at is 500 points of personalized feedback. You can really see case studies on how we give feedback overall. Okay. Just in the context of sentence correction, we give upwards of 100 feedback points. As you can really see, the number of feedback points in every stage of learning. Okay. Which is what results in these scores. Essentially, when students are with us, we can predict with about 95% certainty whether you're going to get a 700 score or whether you're not going to get a 700 score. So it cuts both ways. We can also really say we are 95% certain this person cannot get a 700 plus score because we see the metrics go back. Because when you have these many data points in just one area, you can make that prediction. Okay. All right. Will I show a sample of the study material? If you go to our YouTube channel, you can see a sample of our study material. But with that, I want to kind of end the webinar. I want to thank you guys for being with me over here. This was phenomenal. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Let me share the presentation so that you guys can download the presentation overall. But yeah, I'd love to get some feedback on the webinar. I'd love to understand those of you who need to take a Sigma X mock, you guys can take one over here. And for those of you who are not connected with me on LinkedIn, you guys can connect with me on LinkedIn and go to our YouTube channel as well. Okay. If you prepared for the CAT, should you prepare for GMAT Focus or the current GMAT? I believe if you prepared for the CAT, frankly, either one would be good enough. I think I'd recommend taking a mock test on MBA.com and doing that and figuring out where you are. Shittit says, I'm 28 years old. I'm currently working as a roads and highways engineer and an MNC. Would it be a good decision for me to switch career and go for an MBA? I have a master's in civil engineering. Shittit, you're just 28 years old. Don't say you're 28 years old. You're just 28 years old. The reason why one should go for an MBA or not should come from within. If you feel you want to do something more in your life, if you feel, if you're looking for a career change, or if you want to really stay maybe in the civil engineering space, but you want to be able to be in a position where you want to make decisions, then an MBA would be really, really useful. If on the other hand, you love the technical aspect of your job, you love where you are, then don't go for an MBA. Okay. I think that motivation to do an MBA should come from within. That's really important, because if you don't have that motivation, then you're not going to be able to study consistently. Is the focus edition accepted by top B schools? Every top B school other than Harvard and Wharton are going to accept the focus edition in round 1 and round 2. So yes, every other B school. AP says, I'm unable to stick to a study plan. I had a focus edition of the GMAT, but I'm barely able to study. What should you do differently? Step 1, define time for studying. Put 2 hours and maybe those 2 hours are 2 1-hour slots, maybe those 2 hours are a 2 continuous hour slot, but tell yourself on your calendar that which 2 hours are you going to put in. Okay. That's really, really important. If you can't do that, then don't even start studying. Don't even buy the extension. Let me be very clear. You have to put in those 2 hours. Now, when you do those 2 hours, please communicate everyone around you that you're going to study during those 2 hours. Your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, make sure you do that. Your parents, and tell them why this is important, because half of studying for the GMAT is effective communication. Okay. And then study for those 2 hours consistently, and you have a study plan, so this means you don't need to worry about what you need to study. Okay, hopefully that helps you, AP. Rohit says, when would e-GMAT launch GMAT Focus Edition mock test? Rohit, end of September is when we believe we'll have mock tests. But again, for those, if you're following me, and I think you are on LinkedIn, you just saw, our GMAT Focus Edition course is way more comprehensive than any other course out there, and say way more, at least twice as comprehensive, if not more. We're not going to take a shortcut when it comes to the Focus Edition, just because on the data insights side, this is your best opportunity to get a 99 percentile given the scoring structure there is. So for those of you taking the Focus Edition for round 2, you're going to have a very significant advantage if you do well, and we want to make sure that everyone does well. If you've seen my LinkedIn post from yesterday, We created a module just on the concept of correlation and its application in the business context. Most people have 2 questions. We have 30 questions on correlations. Why? Because it's tested, especially if you want to get to that 95th, 97th percentile in data insights. Akbar says, what if after November, but before the end of the year, I want to take the GMAT? Should I take the Focus Edition? Absolutely. I mean, I love data insights. So yes. If you're not particularly strong in sentence correction, then the Focus Edition may be better for you. Again, take a mock test. Just Google GMAT Focus Edition mock test. You will see an article that I wrote with a video which will tell you how to take the Focus Edition mock test. Rohit says, if I score 780, will you help me with the college decision in the US and how to write essays? No, Rohit, unfortunately, we don't help people with their admissions yet. We deal with thousands of students, and one thing that one principle that we follow is that whatever we do, we want to do it really well, way better than everyone else out there. And it's today we have till date we haven't found a way to do justice when it comes to essays. For when we work with 5 to 7,000 people in a year. So till we do that, we don't want to do essays, just because if you can't do a good enough job, you're not going to be happy doing that. You're not going to be happy that we did that. So that's something which is there. We'll help you get there. We'll point you to good admission consultants, and that's it. GMAT Focus Edition, which quant topics would be tested? Pretty much every topic other than geometry, and geometry is also tested indirectly, but the you won't get 3D or coordinate geometry to that degree. We talked about sample study material. Do AW and IR, do they not matter? If you're taking the current GMAT, after you're done with quant and verbal, spend about 2 days on our current IR course. We have a reasonably uh, complete IR course for the current GMAT. You should be able to get a 6 or higher. Then that's there. AW, if once you're done with CR, is about 2 hours of effort, no more than that. Will the current GMAT no longer exist? So, Simbi, one of the things that you probably know is that the GMAC ran a discount program on the current GMAT, which ended on the 31st of July. That discount program said that if was for folks who want to schedule the GMAT by 31st of December this year, that leads me to believe that after the end of this year, the current GMAT probably will be sparingly offered. The score would still be valid for another 5 years, though. But I mean, that's kind of what tells me that, because if they were offering discount on the current GMAT, but they were only offering it if you schedule it till the end of the year. So that for me is the big piece. Do we provide one-on-one call for doubt strategy sessions? We don't provide one-on-one call, just because just let me just say this. Any good expert is about at least a $50 an hour cost. What we have within the e-GMAT platform is a phenomenal strategy team. So if you go read reviews, you're going to really see people talking about our strategy team, our subject matter team, and within each learning activity, we have we have a dedicated forum that where you can ask questions, and only our experts answer those questions. We have a 5-person strategy team. All they do is help you build the right strategy if you still have doubts about that strategy. We have onboarding sessions that we do with our customers, where we address these doubts, and through that we provide a lot more uh, clarity on this. One of the things that I also challenge people is to really say, okay, go and ask any prep company. I'm going to study your course material, and if I don't improve, if I see my scores are not improving, what are you going to ask me? What are you going to tell me? When you're free to ask that, and I can tell you, other than e-GMAT, everyone else would really say, hey, we'll ask you to go through the course material again. If you go and ask anyone at e-GMAT, they will point out specific activities where you faltered, and they'll tell you why you faltered, because We collect that data. They'll build a custom study plan for you. They'll record a Loom video for you, and they'll send one to you. In fact, I'm sure there are people who've received a Loom video in response to their queries. That's going to be way more valuable than someone getting on a call and telling you, go study the same thing. No. So we deliver value. We don't deliver one-on-one calls because they don't deliver value. Every strategy expert at e-GMAT is trained for about a month on data analysis and drawing inferences. Okay. Himanshu says, I'm working for an IT company. I have about 6 years of experience. How should I manage my time? One of the other things is if you don't deliver something, we won't promise it. Just it doesn't make sense because it hurts us and it doesn't help you either. How should you manage time, Himanshu? Again, you've got to be much more specific. I mean, the way I would recommend, the way I said is, figure out where are you going to get those 1.5 to 2 hours from. That's really important. You've got to figure that out. Okay, that's really important. Morning. So if you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, do that. It has about 340 raw interviews from where students talk about how they studied, how they made time, what challenges they face. They're not just e-GMAT reviews, although there is some part of it, but 80% of those interviews are their study journeys. And you've people who've studied, who work for McKinsey, you've people who are doctors, you've merchant navy folks, of course, you have a lot of people from the tech industry, and they all will tell you how they found time and how they did that. So I mean, unless and until I know where you spend your time day in and day out, I cannot give you some stuff. Shubhankar says, guys, I have a lot of questions. I'm going in the chronological order. That's the right way to do this. Okay. What if I don't like the course? We offer a 7-day money back refund policy. And, that's something which we have honored since the day one of our existence, since 2010. We're probably the only company that does that overall. So if you don't like our course and you let us know within 7 days, as long as you're not abusing it, as long as you don't do half the SC course, which by the way is a lot of content, we'll refund your money. And we know this because we know we offer this because people don't take refunds. I've already given the exam once with a score of 630. Now I've taken the e-GMAT course. How many hours should you put in? I am a believer in intensity. So if you've taken the e-GMAT course, you built your PSP. If you're in stage 1, be intense. Again, be intense while staying focused. So I would recommend for you to put in a minimum of 90 minutes a day during the working days and about 2 to 3 hours a day during weekends. That's something that I would recommend. Now you can take a couple of days off every 2 weeks as you're done with stage 2. Which one to opt for if you're planning to take in December? If I were to take it, I would recommend taking the Focus Edition. Now, for you, if you take a mock test, you can take both the mock tests, the Focus Edition and the current GMAT. And if you find, hey, on the verbal side, your SC is really, really good. You're at a 60th, 65th percentile in SC. Your starting score without prep. Then I'd take the current GMAT. I'll make the most of my strengths. Okay. Since the weekly Zoom session with e-GMAT experts clashes with my schedule, can a recording be available or on? Yeah, absolutely. Simbi, absolutely. Write to us. We'll make sure that a recording is available. Okay. All right, guys. With that, I don't believe there's any other question. If there's any other question, do let me know. Otherwise, check out the free trial. Figure out if the e-GMAT's the right course for you, and if it is, definitely buy the course. You can write to me if you have doubts on Rajat at e-GMAT.com. Thank you very much. The pricing is all on the website. Okay. Again, all of it is self-serve. So you have three packages. All of them serve the same content. They are just different with regards to one's a 2-month, one, the other is a 4-month, the last one is a 6-month course. So typically, if you're looking for 250 points of improvement or higher, take the 6-month course. Between 120 to 250 points, take the 4-month course, and up to 120 points, take the 2-month course. Again, that's the most optimal way of doing it. You can always start with the 2-month course and then extend it. It's $79 a month for extension. Okay, but again, everything's there on the website. All right, guys. With that, thank you very much. It was wonderful having you guys. Have a good evening or a good morning, depending on the time zone that you are in, and I'll see